of minor ailments.
Skin infections, mild digestive issues. Conjunctivitis is something that a pharmacist with extra training and with the right regulations in place can see. This is what you need, can prescribe it for you. You don't need to go to the GP. The GPs are under huge pressure. You don't need to have the cost and the time of going to the GP. And maybe it's 9 o'clock on a Friday night, or maybe it's a Saturday or a Sunday, when you might be able to get to a pharmacist much more easily than a GP.
Finally, collection rates for the vacant sites levy stand at just 2% for last year. That's according to figures received by the Social Democrats, which show 13 councils didn't identify any sites on which to charge the levy. Meanwhile, almost €9 million is owed to local authorities in unpaid fees, with just 137,000 collected last year. That's your news at 7:02.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Cheer on Rory, Shane and the European Ryder Cup team with Ryanair's low-fare flights to Rome in September.
Showers becoming isolated early tonight, with many areas dry and clear overnight. Rather cool for the time of the year, with lows of 7 to 10 degrees. Dry and sunny tomorrow with the odd shower. Now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
Now then, you're welcome along. So we'll be talking plenty of Limerick, as you might imagine. 4 in a row done. 4 in a row and counting, I think, is the important distinction to make with respect to Cork in the 1940s and Kilkenny in the 2000s. So 4 in a row and counting is the story. We'll talk to David Herity and James O'Connor after 8 o'clock. Lawrence Donelan will join us in the final hour of the show as Brian Harman surprised everyone, really. Immune to the pressure, it seemed like. Rory McIlroy's putting woes cost him 17 shots on the green to Harman. It was that kind of a week for Rory. So Lawrence Donegan will talk to us after 9. As will Rashida Adeleke, who has turned professional, fresh from her NCAA victory in the 400 metres. So she's got a pretty interesting year ahead. World Championships in August and the Olympic Games next year. So that is all on the way. 53106, the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Michael McCarthy, hello to you as usual.
Hello, Joseph.
And Anne-Marie Donelan on a Monday.
I know, what an intro. God. There.
Whoa, feels like
I think
Sunday.
The last time I was on here with you,
oh yeah,
Rory had just not won the Masters. It's been that long, and 3 majors later, so here we are.
What we're saying, Limerick really good at hurling, McIlroy faltering at the majors. Good to
you
catch
could just set a tape.
I know.
Just the narrative around Rory McIlroy is a disgrace.
You're
he
right.
finishes in the top. What's he finished 6th again? He has
7 top 10s in 8 majors over the last 2 years. So if you're to,
some would argue it's incredible consistency.
It is. If there was a prize for cumulative under par scoring in the majors, he is so far ahead of everybody over the last 2 years, it's not even true. And yet Wyndham Clark has the week of his life in LACC. Brian Harman has the week of his life at Hoylake. It's that kind of a vibe, unfortunately. He keeps being pipped by somebody else. Although, to be fair, this week his putter was just not good at all.
Tell us about Brian Harman, though. Is this a Lucas Glover? I know he's around, right, but say in 5 years when we're looking back, are we going to look back at 2023 and see Wyndham Clark and Brian Harman and go, what the hell was going on in 2023?
Yeah. Wyndham Clark, I don't think so.
Remember Todd Hamilton and Ben Curtis back to back in the Opens,
no, it's not as extreme as those. Wyndham Clark could go on to do very good things, and he won one of the elevated events this year at Wells Fargo, so he's beaten good fields, and I think he'll be a top 50 player for sure. Harman's an interesting case. Like, he's such a small fella. You see him, he's a diminutive physical presence at youth level, underage level. Apparently, I didn't really know this until this week, he was the guy. He was killing everybody, he was winning everything, and then he's arrived on tour, and it turns out that hitting the ball 280, 285 when you're playing against,
wow.
Now you see on links he hits those fairways and the ball runs forever, and so he can compete and manufacture shots, and he's always been a ridiculous putter, so it makes sense that he was able to win at a links course in the manner that he did. But I mean, are the floodgates about to open for a 36-year-old Brian Harman? No, like, this is it. This is the great moment of his life. Maybe he makes a Ryder Cup team and he'd be a bloody reliable partner. He hits every fairway and he's a lethal putter. So, like, he's 29th in the world. I don't think you'll say, well, that's weird. Brian who? He's been like hanging around for 15, 16 years, which means you're a very good player, but nobody tipped him before the week, obviously. It's that kind of it's still a
More Lucas Glover than Ben Curtis.
Yeah, I think so. I would like the last two winners at Hoylake were Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods. So Brian Harman's not the next name you automatically suggest. But you don't be disrespectful to him, because like, bloody hell,
he was the first person to do that in the Open since Oosthuizen in like 2010. I think he was definitely the first person with a 5-shot lead going into Saturday, and I think given that he never gave it back, I think is probably a fair comparison to go the whole week with that time. So, and
he wobbled very badly both Saturday and Sunday early on, like two bogeys. The entire world except for
Brian threatened to collapse.
He did. Entire world except for Brian Harman's family said, "Oh, here we go." And at one stage I was watching, and there was a close-up of him after making a bogey, and I said, I'm going to sit back and enjoy the pressure crumbling someone. It's one of the great traditions in golf, and in fairness to him, he kept bouncing back. So if you make 57 and 58 putts inside 10 feet and you hit every fairway, you're going to be tricky. I feel like we're talking too much about the Open given the events of the weekend. It was just a damp squib, both in weather terms and
it didn't do it for me.
No,
I think the weather has a lot to do with it. It has to look nice. It does, I know it's superficial, but it does.
And he was playing with Tommy Fleetwood on the Saturday, and the home crowd were pretty tough on O'Brien.
If the weather gets that bad, I want it to be almost unplayable. Which it never got.
You want a farce?
Kind of, a little bit, but it never got that way, unfortunately. No. So it was a perfectly fine course and horrible to look at.
Yeah, pretty much. We should kick on with the news round. Anne-Marie, you have all the reaction from the hurling. I think starting with John Kiely.
Yeah, it was, of course, Limerick's Day yesterday, and thousands of supporters have made their way to the city this evening to celebrate their 4th consecutive All-Ireland hurling title. The players and management team are due on stage shortly at Perry Square. They arrived home with the Liam McCarthy Cup last night after a 9-point win over Kilkenny in the final at Croke Park. That was a 5th All-Ireland in 6 years for John Kiely's side. Cian Lynch captained the side on the day as Declan Hannon missed out through injury. Speaking after the game, Kiely had particular praise for the Patrick Swell man.
To fill Declan Hannon's shoes is no mean feat, I thought Cian has been a really great vice captain with Declan, if you like. The two of them work extremely well together, off the pitch and on the pitch. But off the pitch as captains, they do an awful lot of work behind the scenes. They really do look after the group. They're very much in tune with the group. But it's still difficult for Cian coming out of the season that he's had, not being able to be involved for much of the season because of injury, and trying to get him right, and himself struggling with that and finding it difficult. And then to play in the semi-final was a huge piece for him. Having the 4 weeks to come into it and get ready for it was massive for him. And I think he just stepped up, Cian just stepped up. And even on the train this morning coming up, the way he was getting around to all the tables on the train and meeting all the lads, he just led it, and he was very comfortable in leading it. And that's a really special piece for us to have at our disposal, when Declan was out. So I'm thrilled for Cian. I was so thrilled to see him lift the Liam McCarthy Cup.
And give a great speech as well. Hell of a thing to have 18 months plus dogged by injury, inconsistency, get yourself back moving in time for an All-Ireland final, take on the mantle of captaincy, and then absolutely deliver. I think a lot of people felt maybe he was probably the rightful man of the match, as well as Peter Casey played.
I was talking to a couple of weeks ago who were suggesting that he obviously played well against Galway, and they were suggesting the 4-week break after the Munster final did him world good, because as much as the injuries have hampered him, I think coming back at the start of the year and not being Cian Lynch affected his confidence, because he's never not been Cian Lynch. His entire career since he was playing for Limerick at 18, he's been getting better and better, and he did have a rough Munster Championship when he was out there's no doubt about it. And yesterday, 5 minutes in, I'm just going, do you know what, Joe, at the match, it was a pleasure to watch Cian Lynch yesterday. He was doing tiny little things that were just magic, and they were it's hard to even describe. They're things that I've never really seen hurlers do before that are hard to describe because they're about like body position and things like that. Things I would have never thought about in terms of analysing a hurler's skill before. Just little things like the way he'd lean his body back and just create a bit of space for himself and stuff like that. Yeah. His hand passing is spectacular. His ability to make space for those around him. Just little tiny things that just create space for players around him. And he was good on the ball himself. Got a score, a really early score that lifted Limerick. And like I picked him on our quick picks on Friday to get man of the match, and I really did think I was robbed, I have to say, which is far more important than anything else. But it was he's one of those people that if you look at it from a genuinely neutral point of view, and there's very few of us that look at anything in hurling as genuinely neutral, he is that pleasure to watch. And when he's at his best, that there is nobody like him. There's a reason he's very few two-time hurlers of the year. And when he was just even a few minutes in yesterday, no matter how Limerick played outside of it, when you saw Cian Lynch at it, you were like, I'm so happy to be here to see this, because this is who he actually is, so
I'd imagine when you get to All-Ireland after All-Ireland consecutively like that as well, it becomes quite habitual, like the day, and quite regimented. And to take on the captaincy, he just did it with such absolute ease. He's just so cool, like nothing phases him whatsoever. And it would throw some players and it would add extra pressure onto them, but he just took it in his stride and played out of his skin. Like, there aren't really words to describe what he did yesterday. When they really needed someone coming up to half time, it was all him.
Yeah, shows what they make of him, because he's trying to get back to his very best, and now he's thinking, oh jeez, I'll try a speech as well in case we win. I gotta do all this other stuff. No problem. Kylie, Kinnerk, they obviously realised he'll grow into that responsibility as opposed to be cowed by it.
And he's always been a natural leader. Like, I mean, if Declan Hannon, probably the greatest hurling captain of all time, didn't happen to be around at this time, there's no doubt in my mind that Cian Lynch would have been captain of Limerick for the last few years. It's not like who do we go to here?
Yes,
it was an obvious choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have some Derek Ling for us then. Touch shell shocked, I would think, a few Kilkenny players.
Yeah, so Kilkenny's wait now for another All-Ireland goes into a 9th year. Their last win back in 2015 feels quite strange to say that. They've lost their last 4 finals, 2016, 2019, last year and yesterday. This was new manager Derek Ling's first year in charge. He said there was little more that they could have done.
Probably I thought we were well in the game until, probably midway through the second half. I think, they got that run, they got magnificent scores, and I think you tie down one player, another player turns up. So all the time, they have quality all over the pitch, they have quality coming off, more than ourselves, but I think probably we had chances. We needed to be really clinical today, and we probably weren't efficient enough with some of the chances that we got. They got some fantastic scores in the second half, and I felt maybe a few to 50-50 calls I thought probably went Limerick's way when we needed them. We needed everything. We needed maybe one of those frees maybe around that period just to stem the tide. But when they get a run in you, very, very difficult to stop it. But I can't fault our players. I thought they were, they never gave up, kept trying.
We needed everything is pretty much what every manager will say after losing to Limerick. Unless every little thing goes your way, you're in big trouble. And as he said there's so many fires to put out. I mean, okay, you've kept probably the hurler of the year in many people's eyes, Aaron Gillan, relatively quiet, hat tip to Hugh Lawler. But I mean, okay, great, that's good. Grouch Hegarty is not running rampage as he has done in finals. That's really good. Peter Case is going to hit you for 5 from play. Diarmaid Byrnes isn't going to miss a free. And by the way, Cian Lynch is back to being Cian Lynch again. So it's just so difficult. And this third quarter business is kind of extraordinary. I find it a bit strange to talk about sport this way, that here comes the third quarter, this is where a team will suddenly up it, because I don't feel like that's how sports people approach a game. And yet there is clearly a trend here with Limerick. Michael Verney was making the point that this season, aside from their very first game against Clare in the Munster Championship, in every other game this championship, the 5 games since, Limerick are behind at half time and they win. So I don't think you could say they're setting out to be behind and this is their master plan and we're going to sucker punch you in the third quarter. I feel maybe it's that every team who plays them throws the kitchen sink at them. And I was texting Dave McIntyre, and I was yesterday, we were talking during the game, and I was saying, a bit like the Galway game, it's like a middleweight is throwing everything he has at the heavyweight, and the heavyweight's shipping a few punches. Like, it's not, you're not emerging bloodless, but come rounds 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and beyond, there's only one winner.
No, I think that's a good way of putting it. And look, I just think they got into a place that maybe it was Kilkenny just didn't have it anymore, and Limerick were just there at full pelt. I don't know what it was, but to watch it, they were in a flow state. I don't think I've ever seen it on a pitch before. They were absolutely incredible, and I would say it was all 15 men on the field at any one time were all doing it together in sync. And some of the scores they got, I was down that Enjo, and they got 21 scores, 21 points into that goal.
Were you down that
in the second half?
That was the right end to be at.
Yeah, no, I was over in the corner, but at the same time it was 21 scores in there, and a lot of those, what Limerick do better than anyone else is that creating that space in the full forward line, the diagonal ball in. But Jesus Christ, when you actually just see the eye line of how they're doing it and how they create that space and how the vision comes before the run as such, and it's all happening in sync. They're absolutely outstanding. It is, I know what you mean about the about kind of like, if we know that the third quarter is coming and so on, why can't we do something to stop it? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but this team are just incredible. I can't believe that, like, I knew this but didn't know it, if you know what I mean, that Kilkenny have lost 4 All-Ireland finals in a row, The fact that they keep making it is kind of incredible.
Are Kilkenny bottlers?
Well, they're in a famine. Bottling Kilkenny in a famine that Brian Cody led them into, as David Harity said to us last week.
Said it, yeah. It's like, Brian let us out of the famine. I suppose he probably let us back into the start of another famine. No disrespect intended, he added.
Can I add just one more thing before we move off Limerick? Just because I think the historical context is important, right? Is that, like, not just in hurling, and you mentioned Cork and Kilkenny's 4 in a row, but in GAA in general, outside of the traditional big three in hurling, and you have Kerry and Dublin in football. We've had a few threes in a row and stuff like that, but Galway in the 60s, for example. But we've never had a team outside of those traditional 5 counties dominate in 100 years. Since the Wexford team in the 1920s in football. And I think that is it's an amazing shift in tradition and patterns that I know it's Limerick. I know they were the 4th traditional team anyway, but the fact that they have elevated themselves into, it's not just a breakthrough, it's a dominance. It's kind of a remarkable thing.
Yeah. Do you think, as a final point, my sense is people still really like this Limerick team? They're not tired of the success. Do you think if it was one of the traditional big three, the country would be a bit fed up with them?
It's an interesting idea, because I always thought that the country gets fed up with the non-big three quicker, as a sort of a look, it was great when you came, but we're sick of you now. We're not having a Cork Kilkenny final. But yeah, you're right, I don't think that has been the case with.
Spoken like a true Clare fan of the 90s.
Oh, without a doubt.
Oh my God, get over it.
We're kind of bred as Irish people, though, to appreciate underdogs and root for underdogs.
I think so.
I think there was, more so than last year, a bit of a shift, more so the neutrals towards Kilkenny yesterday.
Okay. First time maybe the country was like, come on, plucky Kilkenny.
Like, it felt bizarre to be thinking Kilkenny the underdog, but I think so, yeah.
Speaking of underdogs, though, did you see John Kiley's big embrace of JP?
No, I missed all that.
In the celebrations.
I was over to see with Brian Harmon wobble.
JP as well, beside John Kiley at the celebrations in the pub that they went to last night.
Yeah, and rightly so.
We have World Cup action today.
The FIFA Women's World Cup continues. Brazil began their campaign with an impressive 4-0 win over Panama in Group F today. Elsewhere then, 2-time winners Germany looked really impressive as they hammered Morocco 6-0 in Group H, and Italy beat Argentina 1-0 in Group G in Auckland. Meanwhile, there was sad news today as it was announced that former England striker Trevor Francis has died at the age of 69. That was after suffering a heart attack in Spain. In 1979, he became Britain's first £1 million player after moving from Birmingham to Nottingham Forest. Later that year, Francis scored the winning goal in the European Cup final for Forest, who have said that he's a true legend who will never be forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, just Trevor Francis, £1 million. It's just one of these things ingrained in all football fans, and the European Cup goal seems like a real gent as well, looking at the outpouring from fellow footballers. So desperately sad news. I read an interview with him a couple of years ago. His wife had passed away
6 years ago now.
Yeah, I think it was 17 and he was 2 years on and talking about still not being over it and difficult time, and came across as a sensitive soul as well.
Yeah, Hayley McQueen from Sky Sports was tweeting about him earlier and saying that like he never actually got over the loss of his wife, and that they were just like this, you know, he was a gentleman that took her under her wing at a World Cup or whatever, and that they were such a great couple. So yeah, really, really sad. It's funny for people our generation, I don't remember him as a footballer. I knew about him obviously, but he was like the Monday Night Football commentator. I don't know if it was before or after he was Sheffield Wednesday manager. It's all kind of mixed up in my head as to when that was, but I always thought he was great on commentary. He used to get like really, really excited, and he was a good voice in the kind of Andy Gray dominated era of Sky Sports.
Yeah, well, very sad, very sudden. Meanwhile, there's news on Mbappe. Where would PSG have accepted a £300 million offer from, I wonder?
Paris Saint-Germain have reportedly, Joe, accepted a bid for Kylian Mbappe, as you say, for €300 million. The offer comes from Saudi Arabian side Al Hilal, and it's a world record for a player. It's believed a number of clubs, including a few from the Premier League, also contacted PSG in recent days. Mbappe was put up for sale after telling the club he won't extend his contract beyond 2024. So Al Hilal have bid. We don't know yet what he wants to do. Hopefully not go to Al Hilal.
I'd be shocked. I mean,
would you be anymore?
I know I would. Yeah, I would.
That'd be a new extreme.
I know.
But Al Hilal, not like, what a waste of money paying 300 quid when you get him for free next summer.
300 quid, you said there.
300. That's what it is today.
If he goes, that would just be.
It'd be grim.
Hard to fathom. Yeah.
It'd be really hard.
I wouldn't think so. So that would appear, if other Premier League sides are bidding as well, PSG are going to cash in on him.
Yeah, that was set over the weekend. Yeah.
Okay.
They're not going to let him leave on a free. He apparently wants to leave to Madrid, and that PSG believe it's already
agreed.
Dealt, so they're going to try and put a spanner in that. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. We should just mention before we go, Mona McSharry.
She'll swim in tomorrow's 100 metre breaststroke final at the World Aquatics Championships in Japan. She had the fourth fastest time in the semi-finals today, 1 minute 5.96 seconds, and that time also secures her place at next year's Olympic Games in Paris. Tomorrow will be her first World Championship final. Speaking today, the 22-year-old Sligo native couldn't hide her excitement.
I'm super excited. I was reminiscing earlier today about my last Worlds, which was 2017, and I remember watching the final with my coach Grace, and I was just in awe. And so to be able to, look forward, was it 6 years now, and actually be in that final that I was just watching and just so excited to even witness 6 years ago was really exciting. Knowing that, I got the Olympic time, and that's inevitably what I came here to do, and then having such a big swim this morning, I was like, look, if I can get anywhere near that tonight, I'll be happy. Bonus, and that's what it was. The final is just a bonus now, and that's great. Being able to progress through the rounds like I have confidently is great.
Okay, we are pretty much out of time. Anne-Marie, let's do this again. What, do you want to do it Ryder Cup time? Augusta?
I'm here tomorrow.
Oh, okay. I'm out tomorrow.
Wednesday.
Oh, no.
Wednesday?
Wednesday, I'm back, yeah.
Okay, let's do it Wednesday.
Here all week, Joe.
Mick McCarthy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay in studio. Let's talk a bit more about the weekend that was. We'll get Arthur in as well. But first, Cash Machine.
Your chance to win big.
News Talk's Summer Cash Machine.
So we got a rollover if you've entered since 5 o'clock Friday.